Good evening, everyone. They told me to stand on the X to hold the mic and do all the things because we're live streaming tonight too. So some of you may be on tape, so just mind your P's and Q's this evening. I'm Dwight McBride. I'm the president of the New School. Welcome to this evening. I'm thrilled to be here with you for this very special program with our presidential visiting scholar, Bill T. Jones. Yes. And we are joined tonight by his very special guest, Jacqueline Woodson. Yes. In this Bill Chats series, Bill, who is ever the student, sits down for conversations with fellow artists and great thinkers, and we're pleased to be co-hosting this series with New York Live Arts. We established the Presidential Visiting Scholars Program last year as a way to expand opportunities for our students and our faculty to be able to engage with inspiring, provocative, and groundbreaking scholars and artists. Our Presidential Visiting Scholars develop a set of activities that are both rewarding for them and for our academic community more broadly. Our first Presidential Visiting Scholars were the renowned philosophers Judith Butler and Cornel West, who visited with us last year. For this second year, we turned to the performing arts, and we're excited to have with us Bill T. Jones, and also a scholar and theater artist who I think is in the audience tonight, Dr. Lisa B. Thompson. Is she here? Oh! Make an entrance, girl. Make an entrance. Lovely. Right on time. Thank you. Bill is the artistic director of New York Live Arts and the artistic director and co-founder of the Bill T. Jones, Arnie Zane Company. His work as a dancer and choreographer is known for the powerful combination of artistic vision, deep personal meaning, and a fearless examination of issues rooted in identity. He has created more than 120 documented works and collaborated extensively and with an extraordinary list of musicians, filmmakers, theater directors, actors, and writers. He has won many major awards and honors, including Bessie's, Tony's, the Doris Duke Award, the Lucille Lortel Award, and a MacArthur Genius Grant. He is an elected member of the American Academy of Arts and Sciences and was celebrated by the Kennedy Center Honors and was named by the French government an officier de l'ordre des arts et des lettres. It is a real, oui, je parle un peu français aussi, oui. It is a real honor for us here at the New School to host him as a presidential visiting scholar. And I'd like to turn the mic over to my colleague, Aaron Hawk, who will give the land acknowledgement this evening and will also give an introduction of Bill's special guest this evening as well. So with that, I'll turn it over to Aaron.
Thank you, President McBride. Good evening, everyone. I'm Erin Hawk. I'm the Director of Strategic University Programs. Thank you, everyone, for being here tonight. Before we continue, the New School and New York Live Arts would like to acknowledge that we are located in the Lenape-Hoking, the Lenape homeland. We offer gratitude and care for its land and waters, and we acknowledge and pay respect to the Lenape peoples and to all Indigenous people, past, present, and future, here and everywhere. It's also my pleasure to tell you a bit about the guest for the Bill Chat series this evening, Jacqueline Woodson. Jacqueline is the recipient of a 2020 MacArthur Fellowship, the 2020 Hans Christian Andersen Award, the 2018 Astrid Lindgren Memorial Award, and the 2018 Children's Literature Legacy Award. She was also the 2018-2019 National Ambassador for Young People's Literature. Her New York Times best-selling memoir, Brown Girl Dreaming, won the National Book Award as well as the Coretta Scott King Award, a Newbery Honor, and the NAACP Image Award. She also wrote the adult books, Red at the Bone, a New York Times bestseller, and Another Brooklyn, a 2016 National Book Award finalist. Her dozens of books for young readers include Coretta Scott King Award and NAACP Award Image winner Before Ever After, New York Times bestsellers, The Year We Learned to Fly, The Day You Begin, and Harbor Me. Newbery Honor winners Feathers, Show Way, and After Tupac and Dee Foster, and the picture book Each Kindness, which won the Jane Addams Children's Book Award. Welcome.
I wonder if I could ask you to, I brought everything except my little red notebook. It's on the table. It's either in my bag or on top. So, what a pleasure to be here with you. Microphone. A little birdie told me that tonight is a significant night in the literary world because of something that happened in this neighborhood 99 years ago. And I'm going to start by reading a little bit. Among the events that helped to crystallize what would come to be known as the Harlem Renaissance was a dinner in March. I believe it was March 21st, 1924, at the Civic Club on West 12th Street. The idea for the dinner was initially hatched by Charles Spurgeon Johnson, the editor of Opportunity, a journal published by the National Urban League, and, under Johnson, one of the leading outlets for young black writers. Johnson planned to invite 20 guests, a mixture of white editors and publishers, as well as black intellectuals and literary critics, to honor Jessie Redmond Fawcett and the publication of There Is Confusion, her debut novel about a black middle-class family and its struggle for social equality. But when Johnson ran the idea by the writer and philosopher Alan Locke, who he hoped would serve as master of ceremonies, Locke said that the dinner should celebrate black writers in general, rather than just one in particular. So the purpose of the event was changed, and the list of invitees grew. Among those who ultimately attended were Countee Cullen, Gwendolyn Bennett, Langston Hughes, and W.E.B. Du Bois. The evening attendees listened to a series of salutations, an address by Locke, and presentations by several black men. At the end of the dinner, Locke, who had praised There Is Confusion as what the Negro intelligentsia had been clamoring for, introduced Fawcett. But though she was a guest of honor, she evidently felt like an afterthought. So here I am, sitting, talking to one of the most successful writers in America. I think it's safe to say that, right? I have seen your, just going online and looking at everything, at least 42 things you've published, according to one reading, you know? And here we are talking about an event where a black woman was a bit wounded by it. She felt that she had been overlooked, that it had been co-opted by other people, other entities, primarily men. And I'm wondering, I said to you in the room before, have things changed?
It's so interesting because all the sister was trying to do was have a book party. Everybody had to get it up in it and try to disappear her. And I think, and it's interesting, I mean, I love that we're talking about this piece because it is so interesting that she went on to change the world even though that wasn't her intention. Mm-hmm. And I think that continues to happen with black women. In terms of the world of the literary world, have things changed? I think they have, and I think there is still so much work to do. I'm thinking tonight about the book bans that are getting legislated and how many of those books that are being banned are written by black women. And the majority, of course, are written by folks of color. And they're getting banned because they're not centering whiteness. And it's, quote unquote, making white children feel bad. So just the idea that at one point we were trying to get erased by sometimes our own people. Mm-hmm. And then the fact that then we were able to publish, and sometimes that work wasn't necessarily seen as quality work, quote unquote. And then I think about myself, who came of age in the 90s as a writer, against the sea of white men, and how often our writing was not seen as literary. So yeah, I think there's a lot of work still to be done.
In this article, they quote some prominent critiques of the work, and they say that, well, it's good, but it's interesting mostly for its sociology.
That means she's talking about black people.
Well, there are queer people also
Yeah,
have
that's right.
that, and I know that having been labeled identitarian early in my career, this is what this guy is about. The work is more about politics than it is about art. You want to banter, maybe you've already shot me the ball. What do you think about that kind of more about politics than it is about art?
Well, I've gotten the books are issue related.
Oh,
Right?
issue related.
Yeah, they're about issues, and it's like, what book isn't, right? But it's the specific issues, quote unquote, that we're writing about that become labeled this way. And I think that it's always been something that I've pushed against, I've pushed back against, because what we're doing is we're decentering a certain gaze that has always been centered, and this kind of makes people feel a way, and they don't understand how to talk about it, and so they come up with this kind of language, identitarian.
Yes, right. Yeah. Identity politics was supposedly something that was a result of my generation of self-involved. Well, there's a lot of talk right now about the failure of the baby boomers. Have you been listening to those conversations? What? Oh, oh, okay. You're a baby boomer, I guess, right? But some of it sort of sticks, doesn't it? We're self-involved. We talked a tough game, but we were only interested in our own selves, our own orgasms, our own whatever. And the young are coming along now and saying, you failed. So this idea, I think the notion of identitarianism was a result of supposedly the baby boomer generation, overindulged. We could remember that thing where you could choose your you could choose your whole curriculum, right? And the teachers you never give a fail. You would only pass or fail, So what do you think? I think you're a baby boomer too, right?
Yeah. I don't agree. I think so many of us, especially if we came of age in the 70s, 80s, and 80s, were really trying to change the world. Even as a writer, I started writing because when I was a kid, I was not in the classroom. I was not in the classroom library, and I knew myself in the world mattered. So why wasn't I in the literature in my classroom? So and my thought was that I don't want anyone to not see themselves on the page. And so it was my wound that started that, right? This place of like, how dare the world not see me? So maybe that's the audacity they're talking about. But at the same time, it was a question of what is wrong with this body of work that doesn't include me? And how do I fix this so that someone else doesn't walk into this body of work and not feel included? So I think it was coming from both a selfish place and a place that was thinking about a greater good. And I think that's so much of the work that we were doing and continue to do in our art so that people aren't left out of the conversation, aren't left out of the narrative. So to hear someone say, I haven't heard young people say that, but if they do, I'm going to be like, not me. Like, I'm sorry. Like, let's have a longer conversation. And also, I come from a working class poor family, and there was not that room for indulgence, of self-indulgence in that way. For me, self-indulgence was going to the library and spending hours there, but I also had to get my homework done, and I also had to pick out a book, and I also had to get ready for a reading test. Like, so there were lots of things going on. We aren't, you know, it wasn't just one narrative.
Well, you know, I thought it would be this way, and maybe I can keep us on whatever this trajectory is, but I do know that there was a time when the notion of elitism was leveled at a certain class of makers, intellectuals, and there was an article in the New Yorker when Mr. Philippe de Montebello of the mellifluous vowels, it was a Saturday morning, and there was a group of inner city kids who were with him and one of the young guys said, you know, like, some people say to be here in this place is what goes on here is elitist. And I thought that Montebello, who was a smooth operator, very cultivated, Europeanized man, he said, well, elite means that you are have a very specific interest. In the communities that you come from right now, you could be hanging out with your friends now on the street, but you choose to be here. Are you an elitist? Are you a connoisseur? What do you think about that idea?
I'm curious as how they answer that.
Did they answer him?
Did they
Right, I
answer
think
it?
it started a discussion. You know,
I do think that it's a complicated question. I mean, first of all, even the term, you know, inner city, you know, that used to be ghetto, that is now woke, right? It's all of these ways of not saying what they mean. And I would see it written in the New Yorker all the time, inner city. And it's like, just say black and brown poor kids or whatever, tell the truth. And I see these kids as already known they're being lied to in some way, shape, or form by being grouped and taken into this space and shown this other thing that, again, asking themselves, where do I fit into this narrative? And this narrative has historically excluded me, but I probably don't have that language now, and one day I will. Let's say, so it's a very complicated conversation. And I do think that there is this way, especially, and I'm around young kids all the time, I do think there's a way in which that message gets to them early, where they are supposed to be and where they're not supposed to be, where they belong and where they don't belong. Whether it's coming from their parents, whether it's coming from the boundaries of their neighborhood and public transportation and who's coming into their schools and talking about what. Like, there are all these ways that message gets across. I'm in residence at the Kennedy Center now, and this is not trying to be a flex, it's just that in terms of this conversation, what I want to do there is make people understand that this building is for everybody, because it's in Washington, D.C., and yet when you walk around that building, you do not see D.C. in the building. And how did that message get across, right? It's in Foggy Bottom, where there's not really public transportation. The parking costs $25. I mean, it's like New York price parking. It's like D.C., y'all. But
little chauvinism there, right?
Yeah, a little bit, little bit. But all of these ways in which elitism, quote unquote, happens, right? Because of something so much bigger than a group of black and brown kids going into a space.
I wanted to know if you would consider reading a poem, because having been immersed in your work now for a while, everyone wants you to read. But I wonder, do you mind reading The Right Way to Speak,
Oh, sure.
page 68?
Thank you. This was my mama.
Yes.
The right way to speak. The first time my brother says ain't, my mother pulls a branch from the willow tree growing down the hill at the edge of our backyard. As she slips her closed hand over it, removing the leaves, my brother begins to cry because the branch is a switch now. No longer beautifully weeping at the bottom of the hill, it whirs as my mother whips it through the air and down against my brother's legs. You will never, my mother says, say ain't in this house. You will never say ain't anywhere. Each switching is a warning to us. Our words are to remain crisp and clear. We are never to say, huh, ain't, or y'all, get, or gonna. Never ma'am, just yes, with eyes meeting eyes, enough to show respect. Don't ever ma'am anyone. The word too painful a memory for my mother of not so long ago Southern subservient days. The list of what not to say goes on and on. You are from the North, our mother says. You know the right way to speak. As the switch raises dark welts on my brother's legs, Dell and I look on, afraid to open our mouths, fearing the South will slip out or into them.
Mm-hmm. Yes, so it's quite a poem, and it does, I think it's doing one thing and then it does another thing, because I wanted to, I'm reminded here of a conversation with a dear and respected senior artist, I guess I could evoke her name, Maya Angelou, who was, I would dare say, in as much as one can be friends with a monument, we had a friendly relationship, and I did a piece which was entitled Reading Mercy and the Artificial Nigger, based on a short story written in 1948 by a white Southern writer, Flannery O'Connor, sorry. And so my companion had gone to pick Maya up in Winston-Salem, and we were at the American Dance Festival. They drove down in her limousine, and she got there and said, oh, by the way, what's the name of the work? And he said, Reading Mercy and the Artificial Nigger. Oh, I can't be in a theater where that word is being said, and I'm not going. So, okay, but we can have a drink. So we had a drink, and in which I was trying to, artistic ego and all, and I said, well, but she said, I can't, you know who I am. I can't be seen in a theater where you're using that word. And I said, well, it's, have you heard the way the young brothers are using it right now? And she said, yeah, but they also call each other dog. And she said, your problem is you don't know what you think. I know what I think. And therefore, you got to find out what you think. Now, how to speak right, So when I read that, I was wondering, how did you feel about Maya's position and your mother's position and Tupac? You knew he was going to come in. You knew he was going to come in there. Because she had been in a photo shoot somewhere. She said, I was in a photo shoot, and the whole shoot started because somebody was using such filthy language, and I turned around. It was that young rapper, Tupac, and I sat him down, and I told him why he should. Okay, that's Maya. But, okay, what do you think about that? There are things, speak right. What should you not say?
You see, as quick as I could, I wrote a book about Tupac. So I love Tupac. I love Tupac. One thing, my daughter's dad is a scientist. I grew up Jehovah's Witness and Muslim. And I remember my daughter coming to me and saying, Papa James is right because evolution makes sense. Creationism, it doesn't make sense, Mommy. And I was like, I believe in both. And she was like, what? And I'm like, I believe in both. That's just the way my mind works. And it kind of blew her mind a bit that you can live in different planes that way. So I think Tupac was a prophet. I think he was brilliant. I think he was an activist. And I think that the press wronged him. I could go on and on about Tupac.
Did he know that he was, quote, according to your mom, not speaking right?
Well, he was not speaking right according to my mom, but he was speaking right according to other rappers. He was speaking right according to the young people of his time. He was speaking right according to the revolution that became hip hop. Like, so he was speaking right in terms of speaking truth to power. So there were so many ways in which he was speaking right that my mom couldn't even imagine in the 70s when she was beating ain't out of us. And I do think my family was very Southern, like, and I didn't even know this until my friend Toshi came to our house, and she's like, your family's the country's country. Because we were growing up in Brooklyn and Bushwick, and I was like, nah, I'm a New Yorker. And she's like, nah, that's the country up in there. And she's like, listen to them speak. So, but it's so interesting that I think what my mother thought she was doing was saving us. You know, she came from old school Black women who were like, you're going to speak right. And as a result, we learned to code switch, which every kid of everybody, I think, and who's inside of body that is not necessarily a majority represented body learns to do. And so, and I'm grateful to be bilingual. I'm grateful that I know the language of ain't and the language of aren't. And
Do you think, I just had a conversation with a young company member who is struggling a lot with the idea of my identity in the world. The world does not feel good. And I was saying, and I had told them about my own experiences as being oftentimes the only one in the room, and so on. And they said to me, well, what did you do when I said, well, you know, I just did what they taught us Black people do. I got to get over. I'm trying to get over. I will do what I have to do to get over. And this young performer said to me, well, is that right? Should a performer who does not fit in have to find a way to fit in? And that's the world that, I don't know, I'm talking to a person who's very successful, and you write books. But do you have that feeling? Did you ever have that feeling, by any means necessary, I'm going to get over?
it's so funny. No, I did not. And it's an interesting thing. I don't know where it came from, but it's in here when I wrote The Day You Begin. The first line is, there will be times when you walk into a room where no one there is quite like you. Maybe it will be your skin, the curl and color of your hair. There will be times when the world doesn't understand the way you speak, the soft language of the country you left behind. And it goes on to talk about being in that room where you feel alone, and I'm always like, this room should be happy to have me. Like, and I have no idea where that sense came from, but when I walk into rooms and I'm the only person, I'm the only queer person, I'm the only Black person, I'm like, what is wrong with this room? Why do I have to be the one to come in and change this space? Like, and even when I was reading a friend's book, and there were no Black people in the book. I was like, okay, these Upper West Side white women really don't know Black people. Yeah, this is New York City. And it was so surprising to me because I've spent so many years surrounding myself around a world a multicultural, multi-ethnic, multi-class. Like, I want to be around people who don't share all of my experiences because I can learn something new. But I never, even in going to a PWI, going to a predominantly white college, I would walk in those rooms and what I would feel was mad. Like, how dare you not have other people like me in this space? So I think that for me, that writing is part of that revolution. I'm gonna change this. How dare these books not be on the shelf? How dare these kids not know how brilliant, how they have survived in a country where they weren't meant to survive? Someone's gonna reduce them to ghetto kids or underserved kids or woke kids, whatever.
Inner city.
Yeah. And there's so much more and bigger and more brilliant than that, just for the sake of still standing in this country.
Oh, I got you. And I was trying to, I didn't think that was quite a wonderful itinerary you took us on there. But I was trying to say that there is, you believe in the word, you believe in, you speak well, you write very well. And I'm wondering, as I said, the last person I interviewed, that I had a chat with, was Dwayne Reginald Betts. Yeah. And, as you know, he did a carjacking when he was 16, went to jail for 9 years, got his act together, got out, got into Harvard, got a degree from Harvard, and now is a leading activist for prison reform, in particular libraries. But I said to him, and I think you've already made it very clear, I said, well, ask him, who is your work for? Now, just as an exercise, humor me. Who is your work for?
I'm going to quote Jason Reynolds on that. I write to Black and brown children. I write for everyone.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yeah, because it's well, that's fair. That's fair. I must admit, I was sold a bill of goods that was this notion of universalism. You know, like you got to realize Gus Jones in 1948 became a migrant contractor up and down the Eastern Seaboard. I'm born in 52, and they stopped migrating in 55. Gus Jones had a revelation, my dad, that he wanted to be a black Yankee. Now, you realize, okay, black Yankee, what does he mean by that? Did he have any sense that he'd be moving away from the black community, moving into the hills of upstate New York? We were the labor force, migrant workers, and therefore I, with my fragile young psyche, was trying to understand, okay, code switching, yes, but you talk one way out there with those white people, you talk real when you come in here. That's a lot for a child, you know? But I think you accept that as part of, well, do you accept that? That you got to understand how to speak in different situations.
Yeah, and I've had to use it. You know, it's interesting. I do think of it as being bilingual. I can speak, you know, I can walk into my family's house in Greenville, South Carolina, and speak and get comfortable in a whole different way than I can walk into a room that looks like this and get comfortable in a whole other way. I have those tools, and I think that's what's so great about it. And it's great for me as a writer because I'm dealing with all kinds of characters, and they aren't all going to speak one kind of way. But you know, it's so funny. Ta-Nehisi Coates, I was talking to him when I got to college. I used to say "ax," like, can I ask you a question? And my professor would, every time I said it, he'd be like, no, don't ask me, don't, you know, and welding and ax and stuff. And I didn't understand them at first, finally did, and finally figured out how to say ask. And Ta-Nehisi never unlearned ax, and I was so jealous. Because even now when I try to say ax, it takes a moment. Like, I have to remember how to speak. And so I feel like some language was stolen from me. And that makes me mad because both are valid. When someone says ax, I know where they come from. I know there's so much I know about them that when someone says ask, they just kind of blend in and nothing gets revealed.
Well, I think we turn another perilous corner here because the question of appropriation. I was taught that if you want, this is my music teacher, Charlotte McLaughlin at Wayland High, who is coaching me, and she says, now you got to realize this is the time when every night on the news you hear you're in the church with Martin King, or you're some demonstration or what have you, and this is an all primarily white school. She's a white woman who, and she says to me, Charlotte says to me, I'm confusing my drama teacher, Mrs. Shaby, but Charlotte McLaughlin said, if your people want to be equal, they must be equal in all ways. You have to finish your words properly. Okay, now here you are, I'm what, 11, 12-year-old black boy with this, and she was, you know, with her sensible shoes and, you know, her fashion sense was probably aping Eleanor Roosevelt. But she was there and she was going to lift me up, right? Now, I turned that over many times when I think of the fact that if you want to be you from Manchester, England, or where have you, you got to know how to bend those notes. You got to know how to, like what with Keith Richards of the Rolling Stones. We were a blues band, he said. I said, oh, really? You were a blues band. Well, in fact, did they not have a right to that? I said, well, you know, I'm still a little resistant that everybody thinks they can sing like Aretha Franklin, you know? But why, Bill? Do you own that? Do you own that? So that what you say you feel you was taken away from you, you can get it now on. You can. It's every rock artist who wants to feel like they have lived. They want to sound like a down and out black person from someplace. So is there something weird about that? You know?
I definitely believe if you live long enough, you have a blues or two in you, unless you just have never left your room and experienced the world. So, so I do think I give everybody. I think everyone has a right to sing a blues song. Is it going to be?
Sound like they come from the South, and they sound like they come from.
No, it's not going to work. I mean, they're not going to sound like that, right? Because you have to find your own voice, and the way it's a young way of doing it, right? Because we mimic others until we find our own voice, and so they're still at that kind of fetal stage of mimicking others, that young stage of mimicking others. But I really, being such an anti-censorship type of person, I really don't feel like I have a right to say how people should do it. I know I won't be listening to it, you know, because I got blues people I like. You know, I'll go to Sister Rosetta Tharpe or someone.
I'm not quite sure I understand what you were jealous of Ta-Nehisi about.
Because the language hadn't been erased for him. So there were words I was not able to hold on to. You know, there were words I am able to hold on to, but that axe got so quote unquote taught out of me that I forgot how to fix my throat to do it. Because it's very, you know, that's where it comes from. That X stops in the back of your throat, where the ask just kind of sails down your tongue. And so that was my jealousy. It's like, okay, so what was your environment? Was it you know, going to an HBCU? Was it you know, growing up in a predominantly black culture? Like, what was it that you didn't lose that and I did? I do think it was Howard versus Adelphi University. But that's where the jealousy comes in, that I didn't, as a young person, as a college student, know enough to say, no, this is mine. You know, and I'll learn that other word, but I'm going to keep this one too, because I wanted to be a writer. This was my English teacher. This was the same person saying, you're a really great writer. So I'm going to listen to him say, no, you can't do that.
Yeah. I'm going just a couple of more questions, and then should we touch down about LGBTQ plus? So you describe yourself as a black lesbian woman, right?
I like to say queer. Lesbian just has so many syllables.
Queer,
Yeah.
okay. Queer woman. So, you know, for a long time, I had difficulty embracing queer. I said to the young people, primarily young dudes, you all don't know what it's like to be called a queer with someone spitting at you or you, whatever. But they say, we have taken the work, we've appropriated the word, we've made it our own. So how are you feeling about that LGBTQ, how does Sarah Jones say, LGBTQ XYZ? You know, it's got, you know, all these letters. How are we doing right now in your way of thinking?
It's interesting. I think for me, queer encompasses all of the letters, so that it feels more unifying, that, you know, I'm in the same space as my trans friends, my trans family, or my gay family, my lesbian family, you know, my non-binary family. And that feels good to me, in the same way that I say people of the global majority, as a way of talking about everybody who makes up this majority, as opposed to minority. I've never liked the word minority, especially to describe women or people of color. But when you think of people of the global majority, it makes sense that.
I'm not sure how. Are you saying that there is in fact no majority? Everybody makes up.
No, I'm saying white people are the minority. So. When I talk about the global majority in terms of talking about people of color, we make up the global majority. Non-white people make up the global majority. So I do think that I don't know, and I never. I mean, bulldagger. I think that was the word that was around when I was a kid. That was the really mean word to call somebody.
Ugly word. I didn't
Yeah,
understand
and
it. No.
but queer wasn't the word for that would have scarred me. So I mean, I totally understand why in the same word, the N word for Maya Angelou, you know, having heard those words in such a hateful way as a young person would make it hard to kind of adopt them. But I think a lot of people who have taken the queer word back have not probably had it spewed as vehemently at them.
So I'm speaking to a major writer. So you would say in a way that never stand in the way of the juggernaut that is usage in the culture. I mean, I feel like I'm channeling John McWhorter right now, but the language changes. So never put it up any roadblocks to what the language is. Now, you will be held accountable for this answer, please.
In terms of what? In terms of never telling people how they should speak or what the words are they should use, and like in terms of saying white folks shouldn't use the N word. I don't want to hear them using it, so I can say that for sure.
And I use bitch.
Yeah, you know, it's so funny. I have to tell you the bitch story. So I was in the car. I was in the car with my two kids, and that time Jackson was like maybe 10, and Toshi was like 15 or 16. And the rapper's going on. He's like, bitch this, bitch that, bitch that. And I'm like, what did I say? Like, this is so misogynist. Why would you all be singing along? And they're like, what are you talking about? I'm like, he's using the word bitch. She's like, why are you engendering bitches? Like, and I was like, since when is a bitch not a woman? And they're like, mommy, that's so sexist. They were blown away. They're like, a bitch can be anybody. So I was
Right, yeah. I guess it can be, right?
Yeah,
But
so-
then you have to give me a history lesson, right? Well, no.
Well, no, what they're saying is that was back in your day, in your old-fashioned time. But language has changed, which it has.
Just has. So stay out of the way of the juggernaut.
Yeah.
Stay out of the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's hard.
My sister, Jahari, is now doing something called Riding for Reparations. You know, all of her kids are gone, what have you, and she is visiting every state, and she brings a demand that we're moving too slow on reparations. Now, I say this because she feels, she said that she was, 2 weeks ago was her birthday, and there was a wonderful surprise. All of her brood took her on a little trip, and they were in a restaurant, and the waitress said something that they went, ooh, like this, and they said, don't tell grandma, don't tell. And she said, what? You want me to, and they said, oh, you know, grandma, you gotta chill. That's your generation, you know. I thought, what? That's what makes me a black person, the fight, the fact that my dukes go up. Are you also, do you think that those young relatives around is saying chill? It's just something you old people are still hung up on?
What were they asking her to chill about?
Because I think she was going to, like, tear the waitress a new one.
Because what did the waitress say?
We don't know. She said, because she said they wouldn't tell her because they knew grandma's going to go off.
That's so funny. Yeah, I get that from my kids. I am always ready to go off.
Oh,
I
me
am,
too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but my, beloved always talks about how I go off in a Joho way. Since she's like, you always have a really, really nice and patient way of tearing
Joho?
someone a new one. Yeah,
Jo-
Jehovah's Witness.
Oh,
Yeah.
I see. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Right. Wow.
Because,
Wow.
when I was growing up, that was just what you did. I'm not a witness anymore, but you had a lot of patience. You spoke slowly and you explained. And that's what I do. So I'm not yelling, but I am telling someone off.
Yeah. Right. So, do you all want to jump in here with us? Anything that you want to ask us or we can respond to? Yes, sir. Do we want the mic for the people in the audience as well? Yes, thank you.
Hi, I'm an amateur musician, and when you were talking about appropriation, it really hits hard home because I've known since I was a child that if you're an artist and you're white, you ought to get down on your knees and thank black people for what the art that has been created. You also said something, and I forget who, whether, I think it might have been you that said it, that it's left me now. But appropriation is something that goes on and on and on. And I'll never forget when I'm hearing these white blues players, and they were talking about no count this and and I didn't understand any of it. And I said, then it came to me. I realized. I said, oh, they're imitating Southern black men, and
Like Howlin' Wolf or somebody. Like
Howlin'
that,
Wolf, Lightning Hopkins, and it sounded phony, and it still sounds phony to me. It's something that doesn't get talked about enough, but anyway, I just wanted I affirm everything you said about appropriation.
Well, thank you, because I am wrestling with it right now. I want, just like we got to get out of the way of the juggernaut of language usage. Does culture belong to everybody?
Oh,
And therefore, the brave ones take culture like clay and make it do what they want to do, or are there stop signs? You have to read the small print. This is for you, not you. It's a scary proposition. I mean, does everyone remember Pulp Fiction, the Tarantino film? I was on several levels, I was really offended by it. First of all, the idea of setting up a homosexual underworld where there's somebody called a gimp and there's somebody who's going to get raped and all, and that. And by the same token, the way the nigger was used, and then somehow we just stopped talking about it. It was a good movie, wasn't it? So can I say it was a good movie in the same part that it was offensive? Do you know, did you ever see Pulp Fiction?
I don't like Tarantino.
Don't like Tarantino. Okay, all right, right. Well, he's an example of a troubling maker who has taken, because I said to him, I didn't say to him, I said, I never gave you permission to use the nigger. I never gave you permission, but he used it liberally, and Samuel L. Jackson brought it home in a brilliant way. So I said, that's what culture does. It's not supposed to make me feel good. You said that you like, or you dislike art that does not, how did you say it, resolve there's something that you want art to do that is always to end on a positive. Is that?
My books are so sad sometimes. I want there to be hope. I want,
right,
hope.
Hope.
I don't think that they have to have a happy ending, but I do think to keep me watching, to keep me reading, I need to see the hope in the story, and whether the hope comes to fruition or not, just to know that it's there.
Yes. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Just one of the things that, as you were talking earlier, about this kind of generational shift between your mother and you, for example, or Bill, your teacher, you and some of the young people you were referencing earlier, it made me think about the word that we haven't talked about tonight is respectability, right? There is a way that black respectability politics were a part of how people of my mother's generation, right, survived. You survived by being better at their game, right, than they were. Being just as good, twice as good. That was the rhetoric, right? And that was everything from language to studying to how you performed and all of those things. And it's a different thing that's happening with young people. I mean, because I remember my own self arriving at university and feeling the responsibility to do precisely what you did at Adelphi, right? And that is to learn to speak like them. So much fun was made in those early days, because I come from close to Greenville, South Carolina. And mine was fixin'. I'm fixin' to go get
Still got my
so-and-so.
fixin'.
Right.
And them.
And them.
I still have my
and
them.
And the word, literally, it hasn't been in my vocabulary for years, right? But I just thought about it when you were talking about acts, right? But there's something that's happening now. And I have to say, it shocked me at first. Young people are arriving in spaces just like you described, where they're saying, something's wrong with this place, that it's not ready for me, right? And there's a different kind of demand that comes along with that, a kind of expectation of institutions that's fundamentally different generationally than where we were. Right, where the expectation was, and we understood our priority as needing to fit it, to do what was necessary to get over. That's not what's happening with this generation of them. My nephews
Are they
that.
benighted? Do they? I ended this conversation that I was talking about by saying, look, can we agree the world does not give a fuck about you? But you've got to give a fuck you and the people around you. The world is not here to change because you are not comfortable. Now, is that backward thinking? Is that missing the revolution somehow?
This has been such an amazing conversation. Thank you both for this. I keep listening to you, thinking about the teacher in the classroom using his own switch on you. And I'm thinking also about Ryan Coogler, who speaks in Oakland.
Yes, all
And
day.
I'm from the Bay Area, and I'm like, and did not. And he's at the upper echelons now, and is refusing to ever bend. And he's got all of it. So I'm thinking we're in a different moment, and I urge everyone always to spend the week speaking to someone 20 years younger than you and 20 years older than you, because it's a certain kind of ageism that's happening in the Black community that we need to talk about. That's kind of disturbing.
Ageism, you say?
Yes. And there weren't this sense of, I've never before in my life, my generation, younger generations, but this current generation wearing T-shirts saying, "I'm not my ancestors." And I'm like, oh, baby, I'm sorry. Because mine were amazing. And taught me to say fit in an accent, and looked at Dwight McBride in L.A. years ago and said, ooh, the devil's beating his wife. You said, how you know that? I said, because Louisiana was in San Francisco. So I think, and what do we do? I want to see more Ryan Cooglers speaking in Oakland, speaking in Harlem, and not the things that we had to suffer through. But I also want them to understand what we went through, so they're not dismissing our generation. And that's the big urgency, I think, we have.
What do you think about as I had some young queer folks in a humanities festival that we do every year at New York Live Arts. It was called Towards a Non-Binary World, and we had different panels, and one of them was, I believe it was Black Futurity. And one of the performers said something like, you know what, I had to learn how to take a Black Power nap. I said, what?
Yes.
A Black Power nap? You know, I can't fight the revolution if I'm tired.
Yes.
I gotta lay down
Go
sometimes.
lay
I gotta lay down. I gotta do some yoga. And I said, what? You know,
I love it.
you know, but I felt like such an old fart. You know, I'm like, no. Can you imagine Martha King or any of those giants, Fannie Lou Hamer, taking a Black Power nap because they gotta rest for tomorrow? Well, okay. So was I the wrong side of that conversation? Did they?
No. Both things are true.
You say yes?
Yeah.
No, both things
That's
are
so
true. Is that
true.
we hid the people resting, and people are now founding images of King in leisure and
Yes.
promoting that view. But also that I made a list recently for a new piece I'm working on of the ages of Black feminists who have changed the world, prematurely dying. It is a devastating list.
And the weathering, the way
Yes,
we
yes.
carry it on our body.
So this Black Power nap is real.
Yeah,
And
real necessary.
Yes.
self-care.
No, not self-care. Community care. It's my getting rest is not the only thing important. It's also the women that have other kind of jobs than I do.
Yeah.
That have
Now that was something very specific. Anybody want to take up? Not self-care, but community care. Is there somebody over here?
Hi. So the reason that I responded that way is I'm a writer, but in my other job in life, I'm the program director for the Center for Black Visual Culture at New York University. And our 3 to 5 year project is the Black Rest Project.
Oh.
And making Black Rest and visual narratives of Black Rest legible and visible as an act of resistance, because tired bodies are not equipped to fight well and to continue fighting, and they die early. So thank you for that point, Lisa. So I just wanted to inject that into the conversation.
Well, how did we make it through the 17th, 18th, 19th, and 20th centuries?
But we barely. It's not how did we. It's not how did we make it. What state did we arrive in? What are we passing on to our children? I think part of what the generation that we're examining now and trying to make sense of now is saying, I don't want to do it in the way that you did it. I don't want to suffer in the way that you did it. And part of the reason that they're able to say that is that we are raising children who we want to feel that they are entitled to the fullness of life, right? And so rest should be a minimum. It should be a bare minimum. I had a question about the appropriation conversation. I just wanted to throw this out and and first of all, I want to thank you both for your work. It has moved me and shaped me a great deal. In the very early part of my career, I was a music journalist, and so I wrote about culture. And I think that what often gets looked at in the appropriation conversation is whiteness appropriating blackness or brownness culture. But we don't think about the fact that there is a real commercial cost to artists when one group of people is allowed to appropriate culture freely. And then as a Black writer, so I came up writing about hip hop. But if I went to my music editor and said, what I'd really like to write about this new Annie Lennox and the Eurythmics album that's coming out, that was like, oh, but you don't do that. However, white writers, I came into, part of the reason I became a hip hop journalist was because all of the early writing of the 80s and of the 80s was mostly white boys that went to Ivy League colleges. So there's a real material cost when one group of people is allowed to freely appropriate because culture is for everybody, and then a real material detriment to artists who are only then sidelined to one lane of interest. So I just wanted to throw that out.
Are we doing better
to the
now?
conversation.
Do you think, are we doing better now? I mean, I'm looking at the roster of artists writing for major publications. It seems like they got the memo. They're trying to get woke or something. What do you think?
Well, they got the memo partially because I'm not sure if you may remember this, Jacqueline, on Twitter what happened when people started to do the hashtag when white writers were transparent about what they got paid versus what our pay is, what our advances for work that is selling in the same capacity, and sometimes we're 25%. 30%. So it's like we let you in the door, but we're not paying you the same thing. So I think that when you start to get past the sort of intellectualization of the issue and look at it at dollars and cents, and as artists, dollars and cents matter because that's how we pay bills, that race and gender still work against us in real ways that inhibit our survival and our ability to thrive as artists and make it necessary to rest. That's all I'm gonna say
Let's
about
throw
that.
out let's throw out an old word here.
Thank you for that.
Excellence. How does excellence fall into this conversation?
Maybe we can add something that you often refer to, Bill, and that's authenticity. In all the discussion about appropriation and so on, one can feel when it's fake. So yes, I think culture belongs to everyone, and yes, I agree that everyone should be paid equivalently for doing what they do. That comes without any doubt. But certain things feel authentic. And when I hear the blues sung by Janis Joplin, it feels authentic in a way. Others don't. And so I think that the authenticity part, rather than the label of belonging, it's something that I'm interjecting into this excellence and so on conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. There's someone over here.
Thank you both so much. I'm such a fan, like totally fangirling over here right now, over both of you. But thank you. And so my question is really, I've been grappling with this, clearly baby boomer, and I grapple with this question of the difference between the culture and our culture. Because I do think that our culture is not just the reflection or the reaction to oppression. Our culture is much more than that. And I would think we want to pass it along. And that often seems to me to be conflated with the idea of the culture and who has access to that. And so can we have a space for our culture and have this conversation about the culture and who is allowed in and out of it? So it's just something I'm really grappling with and would love your brilliance on it.
Our culture?
culture.
Our culture?
You know, it's so funny, talk about as it was in the beginning, because Morgan Jerkins, article that we were referring to at the beginning is talking about the salons that used to happen, that I'm always talking about getting back together. And those were, of course, salons of artists, salons of people of color coming together, all kinds of ways in which people gathered in these intimate spaces and talked about the and our culture. And I think those were such important and empowering spaces and safe spaces. And I think that as we've gotten more involved in the internets, we've moved away from those kind of what's the word I'm thinking of?
Interstitial? Or
No, it's such an easy word, intimate.
intimate? Oh,
Intimate gatherings where those kind of conversations are continue to happen.
and I'm thinking of research I was doing on prison songs, work songs. And there's a wonderful collection, I can't think of what it is right now, but it has some of the most authentic and moving songs. But the thing that was very sobering in reading about the history of it is in places like, what was it, Angola, those places where a lot of those songs were recorded, somewhere starting in even the 30s, 40s, 50s, that as soon as they integrated those prisons, those song forms died. So, I mean, it makes sense, right? Someone understands how to do call and response. So it's a kind of I'm not sure what you mean by our culture and the culture. To me, I have this feeling that there is a big monster, that everything is being chewed up, and everything has a price tag on it. Everything is being, in my dark days, it all feels like authenticity is ever more of a small piece of real estate for human accomplishment. So I don't know. How do you feel about that? Is culture? Do we still have Italian American culture, Irish American culture, African American culture? And is it something we should be teaching our children, even as they realize the juggernaut of history is rolling through? So we're still trying to uphold something? Is there a there? Or is that an illusion? I think I feel in the room something conflictual trying to be expressed. Anybody want to take that up?
Well, I think my kids get it just by way of having a black mom. I mean, they also have a white mom, so they get something different from her that is just as important. But I do think because of my own ancestors and my own history that whether I'm having the talk with my son about why he can't take a water gun that his friend is offering to give him because we don't have any kind of guns in the house to Prospect Park and play with it, or talking to my daughter about why I wish she would wear a few more clothes when she's on Instagram. Like this is coming from this black, this is coming from what I know as a black woman. So it remains relevant to me, and maybe it'll get watered down a little bit in the next generation and the next generation. But I do think it's something that gets imprinted in them. So it's not even about being taught. I just have to say, when I was at Adelphi, I was a cheerleader, believe it or not. And there were 4 black cheerleaders, and I remember my friend Pam, and one thing you had to do was you had to bring a cheer from your old school, because I had cheered in high school. And I remember my friend Pamela, and so it was a predominantly white squad, and the white squad could not get her cheer. And she's like, no, I'm taking my cheer back. Y'all can't do my cheer because you don't know how to do it. I'm not gonna have it bastardized this way. And I'm thinking about that in terms of the work songs, like so we lost that nice cheer from Thomas Jefferson High School because the squad couldn't do it.
And I say it's collateral, it's cultural collateral damage. You know, it's a dark thing, but are you worn out yet? Yes, yeah. Well, should we have one more question, or should we, some of us are going to a fancy dinner after this, so how about the rest of you? Anybody else? Okay, but I can't, Madame, thank you so much for your brilliance and your work. And thank you all for being here as well.
Thank you.
Cheerleader, huh?
I was a cheerleader.